Hello and welcome to the programme which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Psalm 83 verse 1 from the New King James Bible says this: Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God.
I'm with Mark Sutherland from the UK, and he's a producer and presenter of the Sutherland Report. Now, Mark, tell us about your YouTube channel.
Paul, lovely to be with you. Thank you very much. So I have a YouTube channel called the Sutherland Report, which I've done for, at this rate, could be about a year and a half in a major way. There's 255 different videos on there. Really kicked it off in regard to our election that we had in the UK last 4th of July, 2024. And then have been doing some interesting interviews ever since. So it's the Sutherland Report 5161 on YouTube. And that's where you can find me, Paul.
Now, you speak to many different people about Israel. What sort of subjects do you cover and you talk about?
When I talk on that subject, it's, I would say, particularly from the 7th of October, I have been advocating wherever I'm given the opportunity to. There's also, I've been on a fast-track learning curve again in regard to history. I'm very interested in history, Paul. I'm very much interested in politics, geopolitics. So going down the rabbit hole, looking at all of that. And from as a Bible-believing Christian, that's my viewpoint, come from that. And then that dictates everything. So when you say in regard to subjects, I have spent time against talking to, say, truthers in America, and it's all the Jews, and dealing with those kinds of issues, trying to explain facts on the ground where in that regard, and other issues like that. And Paul, having been to Israel twice this year, I'd say by being boots on the ground even more has then put me in an even more stronger position to speak from a position of seeing things with my own eyes. So it goes from all sorts of things. And then, Paul, bluntly as well, when people talk about replacement theology, which I don't believe in, then I will have discussions about that as well, and having a few Jewish friends over here and interviewing them. And also when they've had to deal with anti-Semitism, and again, it's always the Jews, then interviewing them about that and finding out what they've had to deal with. It's a variety of different things, Paul.
This is advocating for Israel. Has it been difficult over the last 2 years to actually advocate for Israel?
Within certain groups, with certain people, maybe online at times, yes. But if you know your facts and stand your ground, and then you can deal with the river to the sea cult quite swiftly. But the problem is we are in a world where it's, well, this is your truth, this is my truth, and all this kind of thing, and people have a difficulty with facts. I suppose on a personal level, I'm in a fairly isolated area physically, so any conversations, whether that's through other social media, whether that's Facebook, etc., then you'll just be putting messages out. People want to be rude or come out with nonsense. I'll then choose whether I want to engage with that or not. But Paul, what it does is when you're looking at various media outlets, for argument's sake, like the BBC, and I regularly go on an internet channel that comes out of India called NewsX, where I comment on all sorts of things. And then of late has been pushing back again, explaining what's been happening with the BBC and bias along those lines, and with other media outlets. It's knowing your facts. That's the most important thing. People can't argue with that, even though some people wish to. So yes, at times it can be hard, but also no, because it really helps you to hone yourself, hone your skills, and get stuff right.
How important has this been to advocate for Israel when you have organizations like the BBC that are well-established TV companies and news outlets and fighting against the narrative that they're presenting to people?
Well, you ask a very good question. In many ways, I was having this discussion the other night when there were 4 of us on a show. And we're not going to be able to compete with the BBC budget, the amount of, and the reach that they have. I mean, when it was started, I think 1925, Lord Reith, we're not going to be able to compete with that and other platforms. But the important thing is to be out there and to be a voice and speaking truth. That is the most important thing. And yes, I mean, I tried to get more on mainstream media, which is rather interesting, but it's not about me. It's not about me trying to get on there. But sometimes you really say, I want to get on there because I actually want to push back and go, no, Piers Morgan, you've got a variety of different things wrong. But it is important that our voices get out there in as much as we can and on so many different platforms. And I think particularly when you talk about the BBC, Paul, yet again, with this recent controversy between President Trump and the BBC and over a Jan 6 speech, which is another subject, believe it or not, I know a lot about and I'm all over. And it just shows how the propaganda has been used. And that even, I mean, maybe I won't name them. You may not be able to go on there again, but that includes even, to me, within Christian media as well, when it doesn't get things right. And all of that needs to be challenged. I think the number one thing is, Paul, some of these places have big platforms. The other thing is you're not invited on or you're censored. So that is always a fight. I always think it's a very cowardly thing to do because it's important that, and I'm talking to myself as well, if I want to combat things, I need to listen to what other people are saying that I profoundly disagree with and then to work hard to take their argument apart.
Have you felt like Israel's been fighting a physical war? Have you felt like you're fighting a media war? And do you feel this has been a spiritual battle for you?
All of it. And thank you, Israel, for fighting on our behalf. To me, they're fighting on the West's behalf. That's it. I'll never forget where I was on the 7th of October. It's a spiritual battle. It's the biggest spiritual battle of our lifetime. And the propaganda war, the Eighth Front war, absolutely. That's what we're called to do. And against that, I think you've described that brilliantly, where it is a spiritual battle with the propaganda and the words, the words of Jesus when he said about deception. And I think deception abounds in a way that you and I have never seen before in our lifetime over the last few years. I mean, I've been watching that since the Brexit vote, through the first Trump administration, I will say, through the COVID nonsense, and then right up until when Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October. Yeah, the deception, the way things are portrayed in the media and propaganda. And of course, you and I are sitting down for a longer period of time, and you very kindly are asking me questions and giving me time to answer. If it's about sound bites, that is where we're at. And we do need longer form discussions because it enables us to get the facts out. But we're dealing with a world where everything is instant. We want an instant answer. We don't want a history lesson. But you and I both know in regard to Israel, the history is so important of why we are at this point.
Now, you were recently in Israel. What were you doing there?
I was over for the Christian media, the 7th one, which was sponsored by the Israeli government. So it was a real privilege to be over. And we had 5 days intensive attending events that were put on, which is fantastic, whether that's going to the Museum of Zion, whether that's going to the Museum of Tolerance. We also went down south to the Nova Festival and to the kibbutzim near Oz as well, and then up to the northern border with Lebanon and Syria. And I think those particular trips, point south, point north, are really on my heart right now. As we speak, they had a huge impression on me, especially when we went down south. Standing in front of the Bibas family home is not something you're going to forget physically. And I think the other thing is, Paul, and you will understand this with the amount of interviews that you brilliantly do a week and media, is the fact that you're suddenly there and then it's like, do I get a camera out? Yes, I have to. I have to record this. I've still got to write about it, if I'm honest. It's taken a bit of a while for other aspects of life, but also to process some of that. But when you stand in front of the Bibas family and think of those 2 children, all fought at 9 months and 4, and a dear mother, and then her father had survived. And in that kibbutzim, there were 400 people there, and out of the 400, 200 have been taken hostage or killed. And then you see Gaza in the distance and you just get a real feel of what had happened. You understand that the residents of Gaza had come over and were working in the kibbutzim and then collecting all that data. And then the 7th of October then unfolded in the awful tragedy that happened. Yeah, those kind of things, they really stick with you, Paul, and especially also going up north to Lebanon and to the Syria border. We, think about particularly right now what Hezbollah are up to. And like anyone back home in the UK, you'll see things on the news, but you do not understand the geography. You don't understand that I think you could drive from south to north in Israel in about 7 hours, depending on if you go through Jerusalem and the Jerusalem traffic, of course. But so that's what we were doing. And basically going on that trip is going out there to be better informed. That's the whole idea of the press tour from behalf of the Israeli government, is to inform you to then say, please go and advocate for us. When you're doing interviewing on people, you can then do it from a better informed way. So I definitely feel like that as well. Plus, it was a delight to meet other Christians doing the same thing from many different countries around the world.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is this going to actually help you advocate better for Israel? But you've already sort of answered that because, you've just sort of got information while you've been in Israel, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I won't name them yet, but some of the people I've met, which is a real privilege. And then, of course, you're in the foreign ministry meeting certain individuals and then having access to them and being addressed by various people, which has been good. And then other occasions in the evening. Yes, you're absolutely right. Then it's the contacts, it's the cross-fertilization. That's what's very, very important as well. And then and being able to inform them and being able to encourage them. I think I've been to Israel. This is my second visit this year, which I never expected to undertake this year, I have to say. So if you had said to me, Mark, would you have thought you'd be going to Israel twice this year? I would have said no. But praise God, I'm very thankful that I have been. It's been a real privilege. And I look forward to coming back because that will happen. But it's those connections. And I think one of the things that's very, very humbling is speaking to Israelis, speaking to people in Israel and turning around and saying, well, we are very grateful that you're here and that you're, trying to speak on our behalf. Also, their concern about what's been happening in the UK at the moment, which is very humbling to hear that concern because we're not in a good place at all. So, yeah, that's what's really, really important. As I say, boots on the ground. I've done that quite a few times in different things around the world over the last few years. Boots on the ground and that experience and seeing things for yourself, you cannot deny that, Paul, at all. And if when we were at the kibbutz and you could hear the odd explosion going off, that brings things, even closer.
Are you worried for the UK at the moment?
Yeah, I am. Very much so. Very much so. Deeply, deeply concerning, facing some of the same challenges. When you look at the journalist, amazing journalist Melanie Phillips, if you look at her writing a book called Londonistan a number of years ago, normally I can locate it in my library or see it. Yes, I can see it. This is very, very, very real. Over the last 2 years, we have seen constant marches in London, virtually every weekend with the River to the Sea lot singing. And then we've seen, various flags on the streets of London, ISIS flags, etc., that should be banned as far as I'm concerned. And that's extremely alarming, along with alarming beyond upsetting, which is the rise of anti-Semitism. But the fact that people think it's perfectly acceptable to scream what they have been screaming or saying what they have been saying, I find that on a personal level deeply upsetting and alarming. And does it feel that we're in 1930s all over again? Yes, on a lot of occasions it does, and it's profoundly unacceptable to me. I mean, we were down on the march against anti-Semitism in London in the last 2 months. I think that was in September. And there were 70,000 on that march. To me, there weren't enough, but I was pleased to be there. We were pleased to be there. There were a few Christians I could see on that march, but not enough. That London needed to be absolutely jam-packed, a bit like the following march for Unite the Kingdom that happened. We needed those kind of numbers. They often say that for one person marching on the street, you may be representing another 10 people. So multiply that by a factor of 10. But it was great to be on that march, but not under the circumstances that have caused that march to be, but to stand with the Jewish people of the UK. But that was important.
What is your prayer for Israel at this time?
Well, my prayer for Israel at this time is that the whole issue of Gaza needs to be dealt with. And frankly, I think it's a bit of a waiting game in regard to, inverted commas, this peace plan. I'd rather call it a ceasefire. But I think people have got to hold their nerve, and it's got to be dealt with, whatever people think. Israel had left Gaza in 2005 under Ariel Sharon directive, if not piled on by the then American administration to pressurize to do that. And then, of course, the rest is history by the time they then elected Hamas 2007. It is a huge, huge security threat. My prayer is for your security, and also with what's happening in the north with Hezbollah as well. There is these comments that Iran have piled more millions and millions of dollars, etc., in rearming Hezbollah. So security is my concern, and actually being able to have the chance to finally deal with things, which I do believe, I don't apologize for that, need to happen.
Yeah, remind us of your YouTube channel again for people
who always said,
your show.
Yeah, it's the Sutherland Paul 5161 on YouTube. My website is marksutherland.org, but that needs undergoing a big revamp. But yeah, and the other thing is, if people want to see some of my work, I produced a film in 2015 called Between Lambs and Lions. It's on YouTube. It's censored, never gets beyond 20,000. And then I need to put it on Rumble. And then go to also find the Iris Echo, which is there's other recent work as well. But go on there. I seem to make politically orientated, or things maybe, if I may say without sounding too arrogant, things before their time. There's another film, if people want to see it but don't watch it at night, called Abe, about a nefarious robot. The Irish Echo 2017 was a warning about communism, and Between Lambs and Lions takes the book of Daniel and sets it amongst the political machinations of Washington politics, and depicts a time when the American Constitution has been suspended and complete overreach by the executive branch. And it does have a Daniel character in, and it does have a President Nebuchadnezzar character in, and it was made in 2015. And if people want to draw any conclusions, they can do, and they're absolutely right. So, yeah. But thank you, Paul, for asking. That's very kind.
Well, Mark, thank you very much for sharing today.
No, not at all. It's been a real privilege to be able to do. I'll say this, any chance I'm given to be able to speak, I never take that for granted, and I'm also very grateful. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.